Emma James of MediaWatch, good evening.
Hi there.
Taking a look at how the world has reacted to the British Prime Minister's speech on Brexit. The hard Brexit.
Exactly. Brexit has been incredibly divisive from the moment that the phrase was coined, really. And finally, people have something they can agree on. Everyone seems to be relieved that there is a plan. Matt, the cartoonist in the Telegraph newspaper, came up with this drawing yesterday. I wish Putin would hack into the UK's Brexit plans and tell us what's going on, because, of course, this has been long awaited. This speech today from Theresa May, which outlined it all. Some of the reactions from Europe, Donald Tusk, the president of the European Council, had this to say: it's a sad process, surreal at times, but at least more of a realistic announcement on Brexit. He says the 27 member states are united and ready to negotiate as soon as Article 50 has been triggered. Elsewhere in Europe, Guy Verhofstadt, who is the European Parliament's Brexit negotiator, he says Britain has chosen a hard Brexit. May's clarity is welcome, but the days of UK cherry-picking and Europe à la carte are over. And finally, this from the Czech Secretary for European Affairs, Thomas Prusa. UK's plan seems a bit ambitious. Trade as free as possible, full control on immigration. Where is the give for all the take? Now, if we take a look at this drawing from the French cartoonist Na, he seems to think that Theresa May is going to need to have the force with her to be able to make this work. This is another particularly popular tweet that has been doing the rounds, supposedly an accurate representation of Britain leaving the EU, and clearly not the only person who thinks that this really is taking a leap into the great unknown. Others have far more specific criticisms to make. Spencer Livermore, who's a former strategy advisor to both the Treasury and Number 10 in the UK, and what he says is, so we're leaving the biggest market in the world, an actual thing, in exchange for a truly global Britain, a totally made-up thing. And that phrase, global Britain, which was emblazoned on the lectern that Theresa May was standing at, has caused some controversy, really. Matt Haig, the author, has written this: politicians spin Brexit as global and modern, which is odd, as they got people to vote for it via xenophobia and nostalgia.
That hits the nail on the head, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There are some people who loved what she had to say, though. Piers Morgan, the well-known presenter and journalist, says today our Prime Minister found her voice: strong, bold, courageous leadership. Bravo.
I mean, it's predictable. I mean, obviously, Piers Morgan, you've got to add former editor of The Sun newspaper. You know, I mean, there you go. So it says everything, doesn't it? Reactions from British politicians?
Yes, one of the interesting things is one of the loudest voices that was first out of the blocks, really, to comment on Theresa May's speech was that of Tim Farron, the now leader of the Liberal Democrats, who, of course, was sharing power with the Conservatives up until the last election. He used a very nifty little phrase that lots of the media outlets have picked up on: theft of democracy, he said. The people voted for a departure. They should be given a vote on the destination, because, of course, the Houses of Parliament are going to get to vote on the contents of the Brexit deal, but not the people themselves. Nigel Farage, the former leader of UKIP, who, of course, was a driving force for Brexit, he had this to say: I can hardly believe that the PM is now using the phrases and words that I've been mocked for using for years. Real progress, he says. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, says that she has made it clear that she is determined to use Brexit to turn Britain into a bargain basement tax haven. And he also accuses her of putting jobs and the country in danger. Now, of course, the huge question now is what will happen with Scotland. Will there be a second referendum? Nicola Sturgeon says that it is more likely after this speech and the promise of a hard Brexit. There has been a vote in Scottish Parliament tonight by a clear majority. She's tweeted about it, saying that Scotland's place in the single market must be protected. Now, it's hard to see how that could possibly happen within the UK after a hard Brexit. One other group of people who might not be too happy, as pointed out by Richard Corbett, the MEP, are Leave voters themselves. You might think they've got what they wanted, but one of the things that they were promised was that the UK would not leave the single market. But of course, who has lost out is really not as important as can Theresa May pull this off? And if we take a look at some of the analysis in the political newspapers, Politico says that she's avoided making the same mistake as her predecessor David Cameron. His threat to back Brexit if he didn't get his way was never taken seriously in Brussels or anywhere else, according to Politico. May, they say, is aiming high, but is prepared to walk away rather than face getting ripped off. Lots of dissenting views here, though, as you might imagine. And this particular quote from Dennis Staunton in the Irish Times, I think, is worth taking a look at. 7 months after the referendum, Britain now has a plan for leaving the EU, but as Mike Tyson famously observed, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Now, it's a marvellous quote, it has to be said. Polly Toynbee says this looks like war. She's not happy at all. Immigration, she has put above all else, she says, regardless of livelihoods and despite polls showing that Brexit voters would not want border control to cost them dearly. And if we take a look at the Independent, last thing here, they say she is promising an extreme, damaging and undemocratic Brexit, and she has no mandate to do so. Now, they highlight the fact that she said no deal is better than a bad deal, in which case the UK would end up back with the sort of the global world trade rules, and they say that's the worst possible outcome that we could possibly have from these Brexit negotiations. So Brexit is set to continue to divide for quite some time to come. No end in sight for us as journalists. We'll be talking about it for the next few years.
To coin one of your phrases, it's the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
Indeed.
And the thing is that Theresa May revealed all this today, but not in front of Parliament.
No, indeed.
It was, basically to her gathered millions, as it were, in some ways, or the press even, but certainly no vote on it, no approval on it at all. There we go. Like you say, theft of democracy. Emma, thank you for MediaWatch.